Hey everybody, my name is Michelle. I'm on staff here at City Church OTR, and I am joined today with Chris and Catherine Marlin. Chris is the lead pastor at City Church. Catherine also serves in a lot of capacities as worship leader. And so we are here today to talk about our four values. At City Church, we have four values: family, mission, presence, and formation. And so today, we're spending a few minutes talking about our value of family. So Chris, when we say family, that could mean a lot of things. We're actually even sitting in a room that we call the family room because that's how much we value this idea of family. So what does it mean when we say at City Church that we value family?
Yeah, and I do love this room. I think this room signifies so much of the value in that it's not just a place for like nuclear families, although we love the nuclear family. We think Jesus was for nuclear families and Jesus was a single man. So I think a big part of that is, what does it look like to start a new kind of family where it is both nuclear, non-nuclear, friends that feel like family, and a big piece of that is doing everything that we do. So the next three values that we're talking about out of the context of family. Because it's just better to serve Jesus. It's more tangible and feasible to serve Jesus when you're doing it with people that you love and trust. And so I know when we were all dreaming, this whole team dreaming about starting a church, the first value that was so evident is like, oh, we want it to feel like we're doing it together. Mm-hmm. This is not some isolated event, but we want it to feel like we're doing it together and doing it with people that we love and trust. Mm-hmm. And so it was easy to know what our first value is going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think of what Jesus said in Matthew 12, how he redefines family, and he's saying, whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my mother, my brother, my sister. And so we think Jesus actually redefined what family is and what it can be, and it's our brothers and sisters in Christ. And so we want to follow his lead and say that family is beyond the nuclear family. And I think oftentimes church can really focus on nuclear family, marriage, kids, but we say like, no, it's everyone, like singles, marrieds together, we're doing life together.
Yeah. So Chris, as y'all were thinking about planning a church and this value of family, what were you seeing in just even culture of like that was helping drive this idea of this being an important value? Like, why did that seem so important?
Yeah, I mean, the evidence of why family is needed in the context of what we're talking about was pretty obvious. I mean, loneliness is, and we're coming out of a pandemic, but loneliness has been an epidemic for quite a while, especially in the West. And it doesn't matter the generation. If you're an empty nester, like you might find yourself with more house than you used to have. Or if you're a Gen Z influencer, you might have 10,000, 100,000 followers, and yet I have nobody that truly knows me. And so I think what's interesting today is that we're seeing the need across the board that's spanning age, gender, race of, loneliness is a big deal. And so if we're going to do this, how do we fight against the epidemic of loneliness? And I think starting a church that's focused around family was at least our best guess at an answer of that.
Yeah, I know for me, even before I first visited City Church, the idea of family as a core value was really important for me. I'm single. I'm not originally from Cincinnati, which y'all aren't either. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that family would be so valued, because for me, I don't have biological nuclear family here. And so the idea of there being a family, like friends who feel like family, and a wider, broader definition of family was really important for me. And I see that just in our community, the diversity of our community of like, we have a ton of families and we have a ton of single people. And we've got people who are just in a lot of different stages of life where people need family and they need community. And it's cool just to see that we live out that value. And I'm seeing that in our community.
I know it's a big deal for us, and I think I can speak for us. We love marriage. Big fans. And also, there has been, especially in the last few years, a burden in my heart and our heart of like, no, it seems like there's something wider, and more Americans are living alone than ever before, by choice or by circumstance. And so it feels like, especially being in the heart of a city where the urban core, it feels a little tone deaf if we're like, and we're just going to make this all about marriage and kids ministry, and we have a good one, but that doesn't feel like the answer to church. It feels like a part of the answer to church and what family means.
Yeah. So what was it that made you think that this could be a viable option? Like, because redefining family in a culture where like there is a lot of value, especially in a church culture where value tends to be place on like nuclear families.
Right.
Why did you think it was viable to create a different kind of family and to really emphasize that?
Yeah. I think I experienced the need. We saw the need before we saw like any possible viable solution. But it was, for me, it was right as soon as I graduated college, did a road trip with some friends to Las Vegas, of all places. And
It's where everyone goes to find family.
Yes.
right, yes, most connected city in the world.
Yeah.
But no, we were there and we heard about this crazy new church plant kind of in the middle of Las Vegas. And so we went, me and my 6 college friends, went and we were told we were supposed to help with some Bible study that they were having. And we show up and it was not a Bible study. It was like a worship night and the presence of God was there and they were praying for revival in Las Vegas and they were crazy enough to like believe it could happen. And I remember afterwards, and this is probably why the presence of God was there, we went to In-N-Out, which
Nice.
is amazing. And when we were there, we were just listening to these people, they were mostly in their 20s, leading this church college ministry. And I met a guy who's the pastor's son that was completely covered in tattoos. And yet he had his master's in like biblical studies. And then I met another guy who was about 4 months clean from being a drug addict and drug dealer. And he had 1.5 arms.
Yep.
And, like,
Played
you can't-
guitar too.
Played guitar. and so I'm like, so this guy and this guy. And then I meet another guy that is like, man, 6'2", good looking, just finished his master's in church history or something. I mean, really, really smart guy. And I'm listening to the 3 of them talk about how they're seeing God move here together. And I was like, nowhere but here, nowhere but the kingdom of God would these 3 people not only be friends, but be seeing something happen. And so when I watched them, and then there was another girl that had like literally it was 2 or 3 weeks off the street, and she led worship that night. And I was like, what the heck? Like, if they can do it, there must be something to unlikely people becoming friends. And so it was at that In-N-Out next to UNLV that I was like, okay, I think I have my first vision for what family could be that spans backgrounds or experiences.
Those hamburgers, man.
It was
Yeah,
cheeseburger,
changed everything.
animal style.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, we're sitting in the family room, and so we see this happening already with City
Yeah.
Church. We see college students interacting with families that have 6 kids, and like, when else are they going to be overlapping and interacting with each other? And people are hanging out for an hour plus after service, just connecting with one another. And we feel like family truly is happening here beyond the nuclear sense. And so it's cool to see like that vision and this value come to fruition right here in this room.
Yeah, it's cool. It is really cool to watch just the interactions and the relationships that are being built in this space. So that's one great example of how we're kind of living out family. What are some other examples that we've seen over the last couple of years of how family is coming to life?
Yep. So house groups are a prime example. We see people doing life with each other week in, week out. We have people meeting all across the city, connecting with one another in their homes, sharing a meal with each other, praying for each other, and actually like getting to the nitty-gritty of life. We're seeing people walk to Findlay Market. Like, that's a classic after City Church Sunday activity for people to go to Findlay Market, eat lunch together.
Yeah.
Whenever we are walking by, we see a big crowd of people, and they're all just like unlikely people coming together. People are playing volleyball. We're giving meals to each other when someone has a baby or someone loses someone in their family. So it really does feel like people are coming together.
Yeah, and I think when we started, we knew we wanted family to be a big deal, but it's hard to imagine like this is how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's really helped is we have kept the language of family at the forefront, and it's molded and shifted. And when we met at a different place, people weren't walking to Findlay Market, but I think keeping in the forefront of our minds, we want to operate like family. And how you view the church, how you view anything often dictates how you interact with something. So I have tried to, and I feel like I have to remind myself and then remind everybody else, like, this is a family. This is not an institution primarily. This is not a corporation. It is primarily a family. That's the image Jesus gave us. And so if you start to view the church like family, then it changes the way that you interact. Like when you go to a restaurant, you're expecting it to be a business where you're paying money so that they take care of all the problems that you don't want to do, like the dishes, the buying the food,
great.
the cooking.
Someone else does all of it.
Love restaurants.
That's awesome.
And there's something different, you know, when you have people over or somebody has you over, where there's a different mindset because it's friendship, it's family. So when we have people over and I ask someone to like dry the dishes, they're not offended by that.
Yeah.
If you go to a restaurant and the server says like, "Hey, do you want to dry the dishes? I'll wash." You're like, "No, like I pay. This is what I pay you to do."
Why I'm here.
Right.
Because you're viewing that as a business. But when you view the church as primarily family and someone says like, "Hey, I'll wash you dry, grab a towel," all of a sudden it starts to make sense because we all pitch in for this thing. And I think as we keep the mindset of family, when we use language like grab a towel, all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, of course I will. Because I'm not offended when my aunt asks me to dry dishes at Thanksgiving. I'm offended when the server asks me to tip 20% and go dry the dishes myself. Like, that doesn't make sense. And so how do we keep the idea of family being at the forefront? I think we're constantly talking about it and expecting us to act like family.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. Thank you guys. It's great. I love getting to be family with you guys and getting to be part of continuing to create family here at City Church. Thank you all for listening. Glad you guys were here. I hope you'll check out just some of the other videos we have talking about our other 3 core values.